Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SoDA Series Live. We're so happy to have you here for our inaugural event. Each month, we'll be bringing you candid, in-depth discussions with agency founders and creative leaders from all around the world. Our goal is to help you stay informed on some of the key trends and topics that are helping to shape and influence the creative industry. I'm Kristen Bell from the Strategic Development team here at Adobe, and I'm joined by Tom Beck, Executive Director of SoDA, and Michael Lebowitz, who will be our guest today. So Tom, first for you, for those who are joining who may not be familiar with SoDA, could you take us a bit through what the organization is and your mission?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. SoDA is a member-based organization for primarily founders and owners of digital agencies. We've been around since 2007. And our primary mission is to really help founders and leadership teams connect to ideas, resources, inspiration, in a community of support as they grow their business, as they strategically change their business, and as they continue to wrestle and evolve as leaders themselves. The SoDA community is kind of bound together in that mission to help one another create a better business, become a better leader, and push one another to do incredible work that impacts the world. So that's the SoDA community. As I said, we've been around since 2007, and we have about 100 members in 20 countries worldwide.
That's awesome. Adobe's been working closely with you pretty much since your inception. So thank you so much for your partnership. And we're super excited to be launching this, something that we've kind of been brainstorming about for a while. So happy to have it kicking off today.
Absolutely.
So ready to introduce Michael here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, before I introduce Michael, we'll just mention one quick thing. After I introduce Michael and get things rolling, I'm going to drop off and I will be participating in kind of the chat and the comment threads in the background. So if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the comments in LinkedIn. I'll be monitoring those. And when we get through the end of the interview, we'll take questions for a period of time. So I'll be collecting those along the way. And also shoot me questions in chat and I can answer those. So without further ado, I want to introduce Michael Lebowitz. Michael is the founder and CEO of Big Spaceship in Brooklyn. I've known of Michael for about 15 years, first envying him from afar and admiring him from afar when I ran an agency many years ago. And now more recently, the past 4 years as executive director of SoDA, knowing Michael personally as a member. Michael's also on the board of directors at SoDA, and one of the founding members of SoDA back in 2007. He's been very instrumental to getting this organization off the ground and helping us grow and evolve over time. I'm grateful for Michael as a advisor to our organization. I think is a big thinker about this industry, an intellectually curious person, but one who just takes a very human approach to the problems that we're trying to solve and how he thinks about his company, his culture, his team, and the community that they operate within. So I'm grateful for Michael and thrilled that he can be here with us today. And without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Kristen and Michael, and we'll look forward to the discussion today and the questions that you have. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
buddy.
you, Tom.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, Michael. So excited.
Back in 2007, we kicked this whole thing off.
I know I was thinking about that as I was setting this up this morning in my mind. And I was like, it's so serendipitous that you are the one that we're launching this initiative with. Because yeah, you were the one that first around a table in Brooklyn said, hey, we're thinking about launching this thing and we think Adobe should be a part of it. So yeah, look at us, what, 12 years later. So this is wonderful. So thank you. So happy to be doing this with you.
That's a pleasure.
So let's step back, if we could, think about 20 years, right? And you can tell us a little about the origins of Big Spaceship and kind of what motivated you at the time to launch your organization. And then also just what's behind the name. I love the name.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So we turned 20 March of this year.
Congratulations.
And thank you. It was, obviously no big party because parties were canceled this year, the least of the troubles. Yeah, looking back, I mean, I've had 20 years to think about it, and I think the really interesting thing that I've learned looking back at the time was how lucky I was to get to be in the very, very earliest phases of a brand new industry. And for a long time, I sort of felt like, oh, I was so naive, and I kind of was beating up on myself about not figuring things out quicker. But what was beautiful about that time was that nobody really had it figured out. There weren't
Right.
schools for this. There weren't programs. There were very few books even for just sort of making the web.
Right.
And so we were all figuring it out together. And there was this incredible sense of community and esprit de corps that came along with it. And I think, we were sort of coming out of the first internet bubble and seeing what a bubble it was. And my first experience, like real experience in the industry, was working for a bubble era shop, and we were just called web design shops then, and I was, I think, the 12th person hired, and it was just all about the team and figuring out this amazing new medium and all the different things we could experiment with and try. And I loved that. And then when the company started to get bigger and the bubble was getting bigger and bigger, I wanted to hold on to that feeling. It's about this team of people figuring it out every day. And the work we were doing at that point, or the direction of the company, felt more and more like it was about scale and money and all the things that came along with that period of time. I'm still very grateful for it because I got a big head start with a lot of things as a result of it. But I was really fortunate because one of the things is, and I've seen this a few times, there are certain inflection point moments where just having a skill that very few others have is enough to start a business. And it's a short period of time because the whole industry is trying to, or all industries in the case of the web, trying to figure out, well, what does this mean? But I was there, and this is pure luck. I was there right at this time where just being able to do it in a certain way was enough. And we didn't have the obligation of all this accountability because nobody knew really how to measure it yet.
Right.
So we could just experiment and try. And the hard skills turned into soft skills that allowed us to adapt over time. And I feel eternally lucky just to have kind of come up at that particular moment.
Yeah.
Because that moment is something that happens from time to time when these big sea changes happen. And it's powerful. It really is. And it's a powerful accelerator to the success.
Absolutely. And back then, it was very much about kind of these niche, cool microsites, right? And I know at one point, there was a study done on the culture for Big Spaceship, and that was before digital was even being recognized as a real viable space. And you were studied in that.
Yeah. Harvard Business School did a case study on us in 2008 about our organizational design, which I totally made up. The funny thing was also for us, again, sort of our lucky origin story. We didn't realize that we were kind of adjacent to any other industries. You know, the advertising industry just was like something we didn't even realize we had any adjacency to until we were 6 years into business, probably. Our clients for those first 6 years were almost all Hollywood studios. So they were out in LA. We had found the cheapest neighborhood we could find, which is Dumbo, Brooklyn, where we still are currently, and it's not any longer cheap.
Yeah.
But we were kind of, isolated in a sense. Like any industry that might be related to ours was elsewhere, Madison Avenue, or tech companies, various places, but not heavily in New York at that time. And here we were in Brooklyn with a whole bunch of furniture makers and artisans and artists in this sort of loft neighborhood, and it kind of we got to be a bit of a petri dish, try. We didn't have the acceleration of a lot of really well-beaten paths and mentors saying this is the way to do it. But at the same time, we didn't make any assumptions. So we had to kind of figure out what was best for us. And so, it was finding the right form by falling on my face 1,000 times over and then getting up and saying, okay, it's got to be a little different than that. And I remember there was one day, I think by 2008, we were probably 30 or 35 people, something like that. And one day I heard somebody say, they weren't saying it to me, I just kind of overheard, like, oh, that's not us, that's the producers. And it was the first time I'd heard like a passing the buck kind of say. It may not have even been that. I didn't like do heavy investigation or
That's
anything.
How you heard it. Yeah.
I just heard it that way, and I was like, wait a second, something's wrong here. And the very next day, I had reorganized the whole company into cross-functional teams.
Wow.
Rather than everybody sitting by their discipline. And it was a big moment of realization that we should be kind of collectively oriented towards the output rather than the input.
Interesting.
And that's, now it's very commonplace to see those cross-functional teams. You see it all over the place, but it was much less so at the time. And Harvard thought it was interesting and wrote this long case study about it. And now we're taught in schools all around the world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Leading even back then through change. So given all of the ways that digital touches the world today, right? It's no longer just a microsite. It's about strategy. It's about your business model. There isn't a product or deliverable where digital isn't having a play. What does Big Spaceship look like today with regards to that? And how have you chosen to focus your agency over these times to continue to be successful all these years?
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately there's sort of multiple tiers or sort of focal distances of the same basic thing, which is what we, again, sort of owing to the condition of the time, we didn't have a lot of accountability in the work. There wasn't a demand for a huge amount of rigorous strategy. We were looking at how many, hits the site got. It was about as deep we went in terms of analytics in the early days. This is all, everybody should realize, pre-mobile, pre-social. Yeah. iPhone didn't come out till 2007. We'd been in business for 7 years. Facebook was 2005, but it was still closed only to college students at that time. So we predate both. But what we did build was sort of a fundamental elasticity, a resilience. We needed to kind of, digital at that point was fighting for crumbs off the table. Yeah. The big budgets were elsewhere. Yeah. Oh, we got to do something in digital, and so
right?
Yeah, it was an afterthought, and we thought, well, okay, we're going to just do amazing things with what we have, and that forced a kind of rigor. How do we work fast? How do we work together? How do we get to the outcomes we're looking for with very limited resources? And that became part of our identity, but also the closeness and the camaraderie and the interconnection of the team became part of the the sort of DNA of our culture as well, and that is really what leads to resilience.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you can make a 5-year plan, and look, if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that a 5-year plan is dangerous.
Right.
Because if you just finished your 5-year plan in January of 2020, guess what? Your plan's broken. It's not happening. And that's a very extreme example, but the same could be said for, you know, your 5-year plan in, you know, that you finished in late 2006, and then the iPhone comes out and the entire world changes. And that's a very positive change in a lot of ways. So it's more about being able to be elastic and be resilient. And how do you assume a stance of incredibly high velocity, incredibly high fragmentation, tons of disruption, and then build an organization that can actually enjoy that and thrive in it, rather than just sort of struggle all the time. And the answer to that ultimately is being digital in a way, because digital is the ultimate elasticity, right? A product, a physical thing can't be changed that much, but in digital, anything can be changed. Software never ends. You're always building it. And so I think the only way that I sort of think of us still as digital is in that sense of sort of resilience and flexibility and elasticity. Other than that, to your point, everything is digital. It's, you know, we don't say, I'm going to go turn on the electricity now.
Right.
So so, you know, it's so much like just an oxygen. It's just something that I think calling it out as a distraction, you know, I think we actually, and where we are now, to kind of land the plane and answer your question, is that what we are really about is about rehumanizing business. And we are starting to do more and more of that, not just externally, where we sort of take an organization and a brand and help it be more human to the people they're trying to reach, to their consumers, but also internally, the way that organizations have been structured for over 100 years plus, the origins of management come from steam power, and we haven't really changed much in terms of how we approach it, or we've built on the same foundation, and it doesn't work now. It's you know, command and control systems, top down, really doesn't function well. Bureaucracy gets in the way. Big companies are highly matrixed. Nobody knows what anybody else is doing. And that is not how you work in a world like I described, of high velocity, high fragmentation, tons of disruption. And so what we're doing, and more, and what we aspire to do is help our clients with the human side of that. You know, you can't answer every single question with software. Software is helpful, but it's probably, this is why I hate the term digital transformation, because it's sort of saying like, we're going to solve 40% of the problem, and the other 60% is human transformation, which is actually, you know, used to be called education, and soft skills. And that's what I'm really interested in, is how do we take this and kind of get rid of all of the old mental models that say this is B2B and this is consumer facing and this is internal, and all of that stuff are proxies for just, hey, we need to understand the people we're trying to reach really well, and we need to understand each other really well in order to do that. It was a big realization for me that's like what I had done to build Big Spaceship is actually what a lot of clients really need, and that it actually can be something that we help them with.
How do you start that conversation with a client? Like, what is that? Because that is a different kind of conversation, right?
Very much. A thousand different ways. I mean, partly we get a lot of calls saying, you know, asking big questions, you know, not just we've got a brief, but, you know, I had maybe a year and a half ago, I sat down with the CEO of a very large private company and we had lunch together, and he said, I know we need to innovate, and I know if we don't digitize ourselves, somebody else will take the lead and will be a follower, and I don't want that. But I'm having a lot of trouble understanding how to get my 2,000 employees to come along for the innovation journey. Can you help with that? And I was like, that's like my favorite kind of challenge, because it's very open-ended. He knows what his goal is, but it's not overly defined. There's not a set type of deliverables against it already, or a calendar, already. It's hey, we got to sort this out. It was a really gratifying piece of work that we did, and we learned really why it was happening. It was, a lot of it was just, it was human stuff. It was communication. Some people in their business were like, well, we're charged with safety, and safety has always been first. And how do you want us to innovate with safety? Well, that's a really good question, because you don't want somebody trying something new when the first order of business is safety.
Right.
So you have to modulate the message, and just saying a word, not everybody understands the word the same way. So, and then how do you spread that across an entire organization with 7 or 8 different offices around the country? And so that's one example. Another one, and it's much more common, is somebody comes with a brief. And my favorite is, we need a new website, because we need a new website, in my opinion, is 90% of the time it is a Trojan horse, that, not in any conscious way, that basically is saying we need organizational change, because the website is the only thing where every department, every group can project their needs and desires for how the company should function onto it. It runs across every silo. But you can't get your average corporate CFO to approve change, because it's, well, how do you quantify that? So the website is something people can put it, it's a line item that can be approved. But when you really dive in and say, well, why? Why do you need a new website? What's going on? There are problems that everybody's trying to solve, different problems relative to their silo. And then, sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to the higher order stuff, which is actually, the problems are the silos.
Right.
And what they need is cross-functional teams. I mean, being a little snarky, but it's true. Look, there's my wife. Wave hi, Stacy.
Hi, Stacy. So we touched on 2020 kind of being a big year of change. And you've also touched on a few of the things, resilience and, just flexibility and adaptation. But how have you been otherwise doing and kind of leading your team through all of this? What traits have you found particularly helpful in you personally as a leader?
I mean, it goes back to resilience and culture, the EQ of an organization rather than the IQ. I won't lie, it's been tough culturally. When we went remote and said goodbye for now 7 months to our beautiful studio that you've been to. It's you worry about people's mental health. You worry. I mean, one of our 4 core values is take care of each other. And so one of the big challenges to me was, how can we care for each other without being together? I guess I got to a point where I realized that there's always going to be silver linings to everything that happens. And it's kind of, rather than feeling guilty for finding them, I realized it was sort of my obligation to find them, that it would be disrespectful for those with fewer silver linings or no silver linings not to appreciate them. And that really helped me mentally kind of unblock and say, all right, well, what can we do with this time? Because everybody needs to feel a sense of purpose, and to just feel sort of defeated wasn't going to help anybody feel better. Certainly not going to help the company make it through to the other side, which is what we set out. That's, as I said, like I've been through multiple crises. We existed on 9/11, 2001. We made our way through 08, 09 and the crash there. And not that this is comparable to that, because this is unprecedented and it's crises layered upon crises.
Yeah.
And new ones emerging all the time.
2020.
But I mean, I couldn't be more proud of my team, is I guess what it comes down to. I think that I tried to communicate really honestly with them about how we were addressing the fact that we can't see our hand in front of our face.
Right.
The fog of war was really thick there for a while. We have a wonderful airline client, obviously heavily affected early on. But the silver lining of that is we got an early warning flare so we could start taking action. And, I mean, I'm very much still knocking on wood every time I say it, but we're very stable. We've been hiring again. We are winning new business. We just won a pitch on last Friday, and may it continue. And I know not everyone is in that position, but I really credit it to the team having such a strong sense of connectivity to one another before we went remote, that it's held up, and they really do care for each other. They really do care about us getting through this as a team. And, I think when you meet challenges as a team, it's extremely bonding.
What types of things you touched earlier on taking care of everyone's mental health, which is a little passion spot of mine.
And mine.
Yes, I know. I saw you on the Rob Ford discussion, which was amazing. You and I share some of the same anxieties in life, I think. But so what are some of the tangibles that you could leave others with as far as how you're like specific things you're doing to kind of help your team in that area right now?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is don't assume anything about them. That you may think you know your team incredibly well, but you don't know them in these circumstances, and you don't know them removed from one another. And so, I spend a lot of time just checking in. Across the board. I mean, all of my leadership team were doing it very actively, as they always do with their team, and staying very close. It wasn't my actions alone by any stretch. But the other thing was, I said to everybody who managed even one person, I did a little session for them, and I said, the one thing I'm going to tell you is, even if it's hard for you not to, I really insist that you don't say anything, make any promise or implied promise that we're not confident we can deliver on. So we have to be uncomfortable in not knowing, because that's the world we're in right now. And not know, if we're honest that we just don't know, and here's why we don't know in certain cases, that's better than saying it's all going to be all right, this is going to be all right, that's going to be all right, when you have no idea. Because then that's where you start breaking the contract, the sort of unwritten contract between people that strengthens a culture, which is, I can count on these people. And so I really insisted on that. And that was my only kind of rule. I wouldn't call it a rule exactly, but my one request of everybody that manages, just don't let our mouths write checks our butts can't cash. And I hope people appreciated the honesty. And it's hard. I started a cadence of like just a tremendous amount of communication. And then as things settled a bit, there was less to communicate about. And I felt like nervous that the frequency was dwindling a bit. And I set an expectation. And you kind of have to let yourself be guided by the demand, in a sense. I was doing office hours, and fewer people were showing up, and instead of being worried about that, it's like, okay, that means that maybe that's not the right format right now. And then just my head of talent and culture, the whole talent and culture team at Big Spaceship has been working incredibly hard for months and months and months to make sure that we're providing every possible resource we can, whether it's something to read. We were, a woman on the team who's amazing, just like a cultural, connector and catalytic cultural connector. She started doing meditation sessions on Zoom where people could take their cameras, turn their cameras off, but you could still feel a sense of like, I know somebody else that I know is there. We tried 1,000 things, and a bunch of them didn't really work, and that's okay because they were done with good intention.
Right.
But huge amounts of research, looking for every possible resource that was out there, through our health provider to free webinars to, hey, let's get a Headspace account that everybody can use, or something like that.
Well, to your point earlier, everybody's so unique, right? And what works for
Yes.
one might not work for the other. So I think providing them a lot of options is a really great way to handle that.
Yeah. And knowing that they have somebody they can talk to. If they're not comfortable coming to me because I'm the boss, there are 9 other people, 12 other people that they could go to and still feel like the company is hearing them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I am continually impressed because I have seen a lot of change in agencies, digital agencies in particular, over the years. Many of them end up being acquired by one of the larger holding companies or even a consultancy. And somehow your amazingly talented team has remained independent for these 20 years. I have to assume that that is a choice, because I can't imagine somebody not wanting to have gobbled you up. So I'm interested to know, like, why was that so important to you, or is that so important to you, and how have you succeeded in remaining independent?
That's a big one. I certainly have had lots and lots and lots and lots of suitors over the years. There was a period of time, but several periods of time, where you were getting a new inquiry every week, multiple a week. Oh, would you come and talk about selling your organization? And the truth is that I started fiercely independent. Then I was like, I kind of need to learn about what this whole acquisition thing's all about. And the only way to learn it is to go through it. And so I started taking every first meeting, got really good at first meetings, and then, okay, now I got to take second meetings. And I learned the process. I got caught up in it a couple of times, to be frank. But I never got to the place where I thought, this makes the company markedly better. It just made me markedly richer. And that's not what drives me. I'm very privileged to be able to say that, and I recognize that privilege. I make a lovely life from Big Spaceship as it is, and I've become a very big believer in intrinsic motivators over extrinsic, that if you measure your success by the awards you win, or whether your work gets press, or whether you sold your company for a lot of money, whatever it is, you've kind of turned over your satisfaction in what you do to things you can't control.
Yeah.
And I take my satisfaction from the people I get to work with, the challenges that we work on together, things that I have a lot more say in. And that's, I guess, helped me through times when I've been tempted, or I've kind of gone down the path and gotten caught up in just making it work. And I'm at a point right now, I'm not saying this won't change next week, because who knows what the world brings, but where I think independence is actually a giant, important differentiator. And it's something that I've almost apologized for, because we compete against such much larger companies, and they have parent companies, and they seem so credible and so stable. And what I've realized is, especially right now, what the world needs, what any given organization needs, is an objective, honest partner. And how can you be 100% confident that the advice you're getting is really just about your needs if there's somebody on the other side talking about their needs, and your partner, who's supposed to be your objective helper and consultant and partner, it has whispers in both ears.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that there's room for that. That's how we end up, it's on any given thing, if you're 1 degree off of alignment and you're only going from, here to across the street, that's not a big deal. But if you're trying to launch a rocket into space, 1 degree off of your flight path means they're gone.
Yeah.
That is, and so if the bigger the thing you're trying to do, the more substantial, the more important being aligned is. And I don't think that that anyone can feel completely comfortable and confident that there isn't something blurring the vision, unless there's independence. And so now I'm fiercely independent again.
Awesome. I hope that keeps working well for you.
And how we've done it. How we've done it is the same thing. It's culture, it's the EQ of the company. Our values guide us and anchor us, and that's the better recipe for resilience than anything else. Is really focusing on how you connect to, and how everybody in your organization connects to one another.
Yeah, and I know how fiercely you've said this before, but I've also witnessed it. You care about your people, your teams, your clients as your own, your product that you deliver. Given so much of the emphasis and focus needed, long-term needed focus, and the social justice taking place right now in our society, how does Big Spaceship address handling the equity, diversity, and inclusion within your organization, but then also as you think about the product that you're delivering for your client?
Yeah, we've been really hard at work. One of the things, we haven't posted anything to social media since just after George Floyd was murdered. And the reason for that, there was a lot of like, why aren't we saying anything? And the reason for that was, it was really important to me that we're not just sort of virtue signaling into the world,
right,
and instead we're actually looking and doing the hard work of self-examination and developing a roadmap for how we can do better. Because while we do okay, benchmarked against the industry, that kind of thinking is what entrenches the systemic problems. So I have 3 people on my team who've just been extraordinary in throwing themselves into educating themselves, developing a roadmap for us, and we've just in the last few weeks delivered that roadmap to our team. And we're looking to really make change in everything from how we hire and source candidates, which is the more sort of common response, but also, and this is something I learned very much from my team, increasing diversity without increasing equity and inclusion is creating a revolving door. It's a way of disillusioning people out of the industry that you want more people of talent and perspective in. So, there's a lot of real deep work in examining, and we knew we needed an objective partner. Back to the same thing, you need somebody to look at you and tell you the truth. And so we're engaging with a Black-owned DEI consultancy that we really admire. They're incredible, and we've basically, they have a methodology that we're bringing about, and we really admire. But we've also said, like, the key thing is tell us the truth, and then we can, now that we're at this point, now we can start speaking out to the world again. But the last thing I wanted was just to kind of say, yeah, here are our numbers, and we commit to making them better.
Right.
Out to the world, because nobody's waiting for us to say that. Right. We have to actually, get our house in order and do better.
show it in your employment, but also in the work that you're producing for your clients.
Yeah, and that's another huge part of it is establishing affinity groups within the organization who can check us on unconscious bias creeping into the work, because we want to put forward the world we want to see. And if we're here to rehumanize business, then we have to do that without bias and without bringing in those blind spots. So what can you do to check that? And it's both. It's internal and external. It's the only thing it's not is sort of hollow statements. I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, good for you. I think it's definitely needed across the board. So you touched on work from home. We're approaching the end. I think we have one question in the queue. So Cami Snyder, we will get to your question in just a moment. But before I do, you've talked about work from home. Do you have any idea yet what the post-COVID world will look like for Big Spaceship? Will you move everyone back in? Will you have hybrid? Like, have you thought? I'm sure you have, but how are you grappling with what that looks like? And are any decisions made yet, or is it still?
Yeah, we're actually doing a soft, completely optional reopening of a small section of the office next week.
Awesome.
Just for people who feel like they need it, they feel like they want it. We've certainly been trying to be extremely aware of what types of interactions and what types of what elements of our process benefit from proximity, and I think honestly it just will this is making us more intentional. Every assumption is a problem not yet solved, right? So, and there are assumptions everywhere and in everything, and it's just kind of, can you get to the next successive level of intentionality? I mean, it's just design ultimately, right? Like every design can be improved. Every design can debunk another assumption and give people a little bit more of what they need, or a little more control, or a little less friction. And so we're learning, I think, where we were spending time in person where we really didn't need to. God, in-person status reports, come on, like that is not a good use of time. Like, just people thinking in terms of synchronous and asynchronous is a new mental model that's really helpful. And so if we can kind of employ that to think about how we work, then we can give people much more flexibility in their lives. Currently, we have employees all around the country and several places around the world, and it's working really, really well. So why would I say, oh, we have to go back to everybody being here? Because that's just another blunt force instrument. I think the office, the creative company office of the future, I think about more like a clubhouse. It's where you go when you really want to hang out or do something, accomplish something with a specific group of people, or a place where you just need to go to, like, this is a place where I can sit back, relax, or it's fun. But it's not about scale. It's not about, I don't want to have an office to impress people that only come every now and then. So we're experimenting with what we have, and we're also projecting what things might be. And that's not even post-COVID. I don't want to attach too much to a time. That's a big milestone that everybody talks about, but nobody has any idea when that's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
other than President Trump, who knows exactly when it's going to happen.
Let's not go there.
So, I'm trying not to get too attached to that. And instead it's about, I say all the time, progress, not perfection. Like, let's just keep getting a little bit better all the time. And that is a better strategy, particularly in a time of tremendous unknowns and fluidity, because you don't get caught up sort of halfway through executing something.
Yeah. Well, to your point, that could be one of the little silver linings through all of
Right.
this, is we now understand what a better work environment and work model might look like for a variety of people.
Right,
including
right.
those. So I'm going to move to a couple of questions here.
Great.
Thank you. This has been super fun, and I feel like I could just keep going. I'm
know.
sure there's
Well,
things I wanted to get to that we didn't, but maybe we'll have you back.
I would
So
love
the
it.
first question here is from Cami Snyder. How do you balance having a plan with some element of flexibility in or contingency plan? Do you have to have an alternative plan if one fails, a backup plan? How do you handle that?
I personally think more in terms of like beacons rather than plans. There's a really great feature in that venerable piece of software, Basecamp, which has been around as long as Big Spaceship. And they introduced a new feature called the Hill Chart. And I love it. We don't use Basecamp. I really admire the way they think about what they do. And the Hill Chart is really interesting because basically it's a way of visualizing every single project is sort of like the beginning is like climbing the hill and you don't know quite what you're going to see on the other side. And then you get to the top and then it's about going down the hill. And the first part is about solving all the unknowns. And then you get to the top and you have clarity and it's about like the efficiency of execution. And I really like that, Cami, because knowing where you are in that is probably enough to know how difficult it is to pivot at any given moment. When you're climbing up the hill, you have infinite room to reassess. Mm-hmm. And so then you have to make these choices about how big a hill are you going to climb, because the execution part is where you're stuck. Like you have to execute, because if you stop in the middle, you've got half of something, which is, not much at all. So, to me, it's like, what's our goal for this? Everybody has to have a goal. Sometimes we do a thing where internally we'll have one goal that is not in conflict with our client's goal, but so that there's sort of a balance of the two. And everything else, how you get to it, how you achieve that can be adapted. You can pivot along the way. So plans and contingencies is definitely, I think, a less effective approach than everybody aligning towards a state that you want to be in, and then everybody can react with their own individual skills to any bump in the road that comes along. Okay, well, we're still pointing there, but we got to shift this way, or we got to shift this way. There's less time. Okay, we need to make the following changes. That's sort of how it's a progressive enhancement. I mean, it's a lot of agile software techniques that are actually tremendously valuable to non-engineering, software-based approaches. I mean, that's the prevailing model of our time is software, and I think that knowing what's debt and what's a feature and where you're trying to go is not a bad way to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question is from Christina Deveni. How do you present your case for change to a client who's requesting results but is resistant to change? That's a hard one.
It is a hard one. I mean, it's going to be different every time, but I think we tend to not want to get into doing work just for the sake of doing work. Mm-hmm. And, if we don't believe that the work we do is going to have the impact that they want, because it's not the right solution to the problem, or the problem's been kind of articulated without the right level of interrogation, we will certainly opt out of that. What do you get then? You work really, really hard, and then they're not happy because they didn't get what they wanted, but they were never going to get what they wanted, because it's the wrong approach to solve the problem at hand.
if you're not an organization that is in a position to feel secure enough doing that, maybe, do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think it's a huge, I mean, everything comes down to human expectations. Expectation management is not like a thing that you do when things are kind of a problem. You should be doing it at all times with everyone. How you engage. We believe that the best solution would be to approach it this way. Well, we can't do that. Okay, well, let's talk about why you can't do that and get down to the, there's the 5 whys. There's a lot of methods for sort of distilling down. We've offered free workshops. We're not going to charge you for this, but we'll give you an hour, a 2-hour workshop to really try to get down to the core problem at hand. And if you don't agree with it at the end, no problem. You got whatever you got out of free time. And we still save time because we didn't enter into a giant pitch or something like that. There's a lot of different ways. I think the key thing more than anything else is get a sense of what are the blockages. And if you can't help them, but you need the revenue, which is certainly a situation I've been in. We're all, anyone who's running a business, then know that and behave accordingly. Set expectations. You're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. I said to you on this date, we're going to do this, and I'm going to maintain that. We're going to do everything we possibly can to help them with their situation, their problem, given the constraints that have been given to us. The problem is if people internally feel like it's going to be anything other than that, then they're going to feel let down and dispirited. Morale will sink. If the client thinks anything other than what you believe, like, I'm going to give it my all and you will see that, but I do think that you're not going to get the following benefits from this, and you repeat that, then they cannot blame you for it ultimately. And you still collect the revenue. It's expectation management, and it sounds so sort of simple and trite, but it's actually really hard because you have to keep reinforcing and keep pivoting those expectations and be a really, really good interrogator and listener.
Yeah. So Christina, let us know how that goes for you.
Yeah.
I think Tom has hopefully posted all of our LinkedIn links in the chat. So feel free to reach out to any one of us at any point, anyone. And Laura Squillis, our last question for today. So you referred to a talk interview between Rob Ford and Michael. Can you share more details on when that took place or how to find it online? And Michael, I know if you go, Laura, if you go to the FWA.com, Rob Ford is the founder of the FWA, and he has a whole section on mental health and awareness in the creative community. So I would definitely check there. But Michael, do you remember I don't remember the exact date and know if that's been recorded somewhere.
What I remember is the Made of Millions stuff that I did last year, which was one of the scarier things I've done.
That's what it was. You're right.
In my career. I know Rob has been doing that, and we have actually communicated about it, and I should pick that back up with him. Made of Millions is a fantastic initiative coming out of a SoDA agency, and it is basically, it was, let's destigmatize mental health struggles in the workplace specifically. So it was about managers, and it was one of the sort of tag somebody. I got tagged, and I really ruminated about it. How much do I want to talk about this? And I just ultimately decided that, up to a point, I might as well just share that I've had ongoing, pretty lifelong struggles with anxiety and depression, and it has shaped me in many ways, and I don't feel ashamed of that at all. In fact, I want my team and anybody else to feel not just okay about it, but that it's part of them. And while you probably need to manage it, I need to manage it 1,000 different ways. that anything that I could do to destigmatize it was more important an outcome than my anxiety about saying it publicly. So I just did it, and I was really, really nervous. But then the response was so positive and thoughtful, and I ultimately felt really gratified that I took a deep breath and did it, because it was worth it.
I know I appreciated hearing it, because I have had a lot of similar struggles for a lot of my life, although I think just in the past few years I've come to realize it. But I think, as yet again an example of an amazing leader that you are, to come out and to share that with the world, and to help people be more comfortable talking about it as part of the reality, I think. And that, from what I remember, again, I'm chalking it to age. From what I remember, this was like sometime last year. So this was even before the pandemic.
Yes.
And I think all of us can probably agree that mental health is becoming an increasingly more important topic, as we have all been faced with all of the challenges globally, but also here in the United States. So I encourage all of you to join those conversations. Made of Millions. Hopefully Tom has put that link in the chat, and then also the FWA.com I know has a section on it as well.
And here's Tom.
Thank you, Michael. I have
really,
really enjoyed this. I was nervous, a little anxiety coming up for me, but I have really thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and hope that we can have you back on again.
Thanks, Kristen.
And if we did not get to your question, we sincerely apologize. Again, feel free to reach out to any one of us on LinkedIn. As we initiated or said in the beginning, the SoDA Series Live is a collaboration between SoDA, the Society of Digital Agencies, and our Adobe XD team here. You can access more articles and interviews on the SoDA Series on xdideas.com. And you'll find lots of great information on different perspectives from other SoDA member agency leaders and friends. Tom, do you have any closing remarks?
We're coming up against the hour. So again, just a big thanks to Michael for sharing your time with us, and some hard-fought wisdom and learning over the past 20 years. We're grateful that you can maybe fast forward some of that learning for some of our listeners, hopefully. And if
I can save anyone even a single face plant, I would be happy.
And I always just appreciate how you're always learning and kind of always moving on to something new, and the whole notion of just like, let's just try to get a little bit better every day, I think is a really, really important mantra to some extent in all times. But certainly as we're all like locked down in our houses during COVID, and this notion of like, what do I do today? What do I do today? I think it's very achievable to think like, I want to do a little bit better and evolve a little bit more today. So thanks for your inspirational leadership, and for sharing your wisdom, and for being with us here today. Really appreciate it. And we'll hope to see you soon again. I'm glad to hear the office is opening up. That was my last trip before the lockdown back in
that's right.
March in Brooklyn at Big Spaceship. And it somehow seems like yesterday and 18 lifetimes ago. So
yes.
Isn't that so true? Well, thank you for all
during
of those.
COVID, life is a flat circle. Time is a flat circle.
There we go. But yeah, thank you all to all the listeners too, and the attendees. We appreciate it. For
thank you for
I don't know if you can pop over to the closing card, but we'll just share a couple details. We'll be doing these monthly going forward. Our next one is on November 12th with Samantha and Aaron Edwards, a brother and sister founding team of the Charles in New York. Great agency, great story, great lessons to learn from those two about founding a business together as siblings and running a creative business in this time. So Kristen, I'll turn it back over to you to maybe close down. But again, just on behalf of SoDA, I want to thank Adobe for their role in helping to make this possible. We're so grateful for them and for their support of the creative community. And thanks again to all of you for being here today.
Thank you, Tom, for your partnership and for making this event even possible. Could not have done it without you. So yes, we hope you enjoyed today. As our first event. Send us any feedback as well, what you liked, what you didn't like, what we should change. And we hope to see you all back here on November 12th for the Charles Group session. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.